So last December in 2020, we were approached by descendants Davis and Joanne Calvert, who were notified that this portrait of George Henry Calvert was coming up for auction, and they offered to acquire it for us and donate it to the Historical Society. So when this painting was advertised, it was advertised as being William Calvert, who was actually Charles Benedict's son, so that would be George Henry, who we have pictured here, his nephew. We were able to tell as soon as we saw the portrait that it was in fact George Henry, because we are lucky enough to have a number of images of George Henry, and is spot on for George Henry. The frame on the portrait is original to the painting, so it is fully original. The stretcher is original. The painting's in great shape. We did have the frame conserved, again, thanks to Davis and Joanne Calvert, because the compo, there was a bunch of elements of compo that were loose and needed some ingilding and stabilization. So that was all done. So when this arrived here, during the condition reporting, a small piece of paper was found tucked on the back in between the canvas and the frame. When I removed the piece of paper, it turned out to be an image of the artist himself, Richard Stagg. So this picture was taken within a year of the artist's death. So it's a wonderful little addition to our collection that we also have an original image of the artist himself. Also, it's very difficult to see on the portrait, but there is a monogram from the artist, RMS, which is located very subtly on the portrait itself. So another addition to the collection within the last year are these silver sugar tongs that were purchased for the collection in honor of that day for all his contributions to Riversdale. These are, again, sugar tongs that were made in England. They have London hallmarks. They were made by Stephen Adams, an English silversmith. These, you can tell, date a little bit later than earlier sugar tongs. When you're looking, they have scissor shape. Those are earlier. These usually, when you see this U-shaped sugar tongs, these date immediately, you can say, after the last quarter of the 18th century. So again, these are hallmarked 1803 by Stephen Adams. This tall case clock was donated to the collection through the descendant family of the Congers. Mary Calvert Conger was a lifelong supporter of Riversdale, and Calvert descendant who passed away in August of 2020. And it was her wish that this clock, which has always been purported to have come from Riversdale, be donated back. So this is an early 19th century American Federal tall case clock. If you're looking at the bonnet, behind the glass, the bonnet has a flat molded top with two inlaid vertical panels of bellflower motifs. So right here, the bellflower motifs are a signature element of Maryland furniture. So that is an indication that the case was built here in Maryland.
All right, whenever you're ready.
So the white enameled clock face here, it has a moon phase dial with the hemispherical motifs, so in the east and west hemispheres there, which was common. We have the main dial, and then we have the seconds dial, and then the date dial here. And then the two winding components that clocks would either have a key or a crank. So this clock has a crank. It's original crank, which we open the case here. We have the two weights here for the two winding. So one of these weights in the cranks deals with the clock and the pendulum. The other one would deal with the strike. So you see the name on here, C.W. Hayden. We are still researching this. Mel Kornspan, who is a docent here, and our resident clock expert, who has been collecting and restoring clocks for over 50 years. He's been helping with our research. And the thought is C.W. Hayden he was an English works maker. So the works of the clock, the brain of it, are English. The thought is also the face is also English because the face and the works need to work together with the moon phase and everything. Those would have been shipped from England, come over here, and then the case that the clock is in was made here in Maryland. The Calvert provenance that was mentioned earlier, we do have all the information and the provenance lines up. This clock was mentioned in C.B. Calvert's inventory in 1864 when he passed away. There was an entry clock mentioned. Then in 1877, when his wife Charlotte Calvert passed away, there was an auction of items here at Riversdale. And in the auction catalog was listed an upright mahogany clock that was purchased and sold for $70. We have an original auction catalog from Mary Calvert Conger, who this clock also came from, that was passed down from Eleanor McCubbin Calvert, who attended the auction and made personal notes in it. And her personal notes, it says $70. So the thought is she went to the auction, she purchased this clock for $70. She brought it back to McAlpine, which is where she lived. The clock then passed down to her son, Charles Baltimore Calvert Jr., and then from there to Mary Calvert Conger, who ended up donating it to us. So we do have the line of descent pretty clearly lined up in evidence that it would have been here at Riversdale, which is what the family has been saying. So it's a wonderful connection and return back to Riversdale.